Today is day 18 of the Karen Reed trial. I'm going to give you my daily recap. I'm also 27 weeks pregnant, and you will all be happy to know that I got a new headboard. So the pregnant person put that together tonight, and I'm exhausted. And I also flew home from Florida this morning, so I woke up at like 5 a.m. But we're going to get right into it because we had a full day, and it was a very spicy day. We started off the day with the first witness. His name is Nick Bradford, and he is a DNA expert for Bodie Technology. The first item that he took a sample from that he examined was the passenger side taillight. John O'Keefe could not be excluded, so it was more likely than not that John O'Keefe's DNA was on that taillight. There was no DNA from Proctor or Buchanan on the taillight. His next item was the shaft end of the hair that was found on the vehicle. He could not get results. It was undetermined because they were below the limit of detection. Alan Jackson does the cross-examination. He says that Proctor couldn't fully be ruled out because it wasn't like a 0% chance it was Proctor, but he just is trying to, insert a little bit of doubt here and there. He asked if Brian Albert, Higgins, or Kevin Albert DNA were tested, and Nick says no. The next witness is Carl Miyasako, I believe that's how you say his last name, and he is another DNA analyst from Bodie Technologies. He is doing the mitochondrial DNA testing on the hair sample, and he says that John O'Keefe could not be excluded, which means he is a probable inclusion, that it's most likely John O'Keefe's hair. Alan Jackson does the cross-examination here. He goes down a deeper explanation of mitochondrial DNA and explains that basically it's passed down from your mother and her grandmother. It's the maternal lineage, and siblings share the same mitochondrial DNA. Based on the genetic data obtained from the hair sample from John O'Keefe, it could come from anyone in his maternal line. So Alan Jackson brings up the maternal nephew, or potentially his mother. There's an objection, but it does put a good amount of doubt in your head. The next witness is Shannon Burgess, and he is a digital forensics examiner. He specializes in vehicle and cell phone forensics, and he's employed by a company called Aperture. So there was a motion discussed in court, I believe it was on Friday, and Alessi was arguing at length that they just got this report on May 11th, and it has new information in it, and it should be excluded. And the judge has said, you know what, I'm going to let both of them testify, but I'm going to give the defense, some leeway on cross-examination, so just go ahead and ask whatever you want. And it got good. I took a ton of notes on his direct examination. I'm going to just go really quickly through it because the fireworks were definitely in the cross-exam. He became involved in the case in 2024 in October. He received reports from Mass State Police and reviewed testimony from Nicholas Garino and the report from Ian Whiffen. He also received video evidence. He's looking into two events essentially that happened. They have a name, 1162, and these are tech stream events. One of them has been identified as a 3-point turn maneuver, and the other one is a backup maneuver. So he created a PowerPoint as an overview to his report, and explains that there's a bunch of computers in the vehicle, and there's not just one black box, but there is a running clock inside the vehicle. It tracks events, and once you power on, the event time begins that timestamp. This is the infotainment and the telematics that were in Karen Reed's vehicle. He got these from Tully. We end up finding that out on cross-exam. He says originally the user data was missed in the initial download that was done because he had a theory that either two things could have happened. It was a bad or a partial read of one of the chips, or the data bearing the chips was overlooked and not downloaded. And we kind of get into his opinions after that. Hank Brennan wants to know if you have an opinion based on all of your studying of the data. When was Karen Reed's vehicle turned on January 29, 2022 for the first time? And he says it was at 12:12:36 seconds. And then he says the power off event was 12:42:08 a.m. The next power on was at 5:07 a.m. And we know that's when Karen was leaving to go look for John. The power off was at 5:46 a.m. and 20 seconds. So what he does is he cross-references the cameras that he can obtain, like John O'Keefe's Ring camera, the camera at the house in Dighton, with the car time to come up with the accurate timestamp. So he was cross-examining it with John O'Keefe's user data on his phone as well. It starts to get really juicy when Alessi is doing the cross-exam, so I'll get into that. He starts with the expert's education. So as we all know, as an expert, you have to be qualified to be an expert. And a lot of that comes with, testifying in other trials, all the work you've done, if you've done peer reviews, if you've written articles, obviously like your education really comes into play too. I haven't been explaining the expert's education because, it's very mundane when we get into that, and like the DNA experts, like I don't want to know where they went to college. So he starts bringing up his CVs, which are his resumes, and he brings up 2 versions of his CV. And he, on that CV, it says that he's currently pursuing under his bachelor's degree at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. He admits, I don't hold any bachelor degrees. I just am pursuing these degrees, and I have been pursuing them for years. But I have all this experience, blah, 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 and the highest degree he holds is his associate's degree. And these are the CVs that he turned over to the Commonwealth when he was getting hired, and that was then provided to the defense and to the court. What he doesn't know is that Alessi has gone on to Aperture's website, which has a link to his LinkedIn page, which says that he holds a degree from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And it says that he was graduated from that degree in 2018. So Alessi says, were you aware that someone from the defense had accessed your LinkedIn page or like attempted to like look at your page? Because it usually will notify you. And he says no. But within the last 72 hours, that hyperlink for him on the Aperture website has been disabled. That goes to his LinkedIn. He says that it would have been the expected graduation date in 2018, but he didn't put that there. That's something that Aperture put, and he wasn't aware. So he doesn't hold a degree at all. He got his associate's degree in 2015. He's been working on his degree for approximately 17 years. Alessi starts asking about his work for insurance companies. There's lots of objections because he gets hired by insurance companies when people are like arguing about denied claims, etc. Okay, so this is where it gets really embarrassing. So most of what he stated in direct examination was based on the initial reporting and the testing done from these chips that are in the car. He says that, remember we heard 2 reasons that he wasn't able to do those downloads those downloads weren't done because he got a bit and a gigabyte confused. So he said he couldn't run the reports. Alessi says that it wasn't until the defense's expert read the report, submitted an affidavit to let Shannon Burgess know that you misinterpreted this. He doesn't know how much the Commonwealth is paying Aperture. He is turning beet red at this point too. So his report was originally filed January 30th, 2025. This is where it gets even worse. He never mentioned the word collision or text stream event in that report. Since then, he has released a new report, May 8th, 2025 this year. He's saying that he prepared this report all on his own, even though in the email he sent to Brennan with the report, it says, "Dear Mr. Brennan, pursuant to your request, blah, 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 blah." And he says that he usually just copies and pastes that, and he doesn't review everything. It's not a big deal. Alessi wants to know, who did you speak with before you wrote that report? He says, no one. And then Alessi goes, did you speak to Tully? And he goes, oh yes, I spoke to Tully. They've spoken a handful of times. He reached out to Brennan on the 7th before he emailed the report on the 8th too. Alessi wants to know, is this the first time you've submitted a supplemental report, as you're calling it, in the middle of the trial? The trial started in April. Were you watching the testimony? Why did you just submit this out of nowhere? And he says he just submitted it. So that's all we know. Let's do day 19 tomorrow.